Welcome to the Reheat on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook. That's RT Young. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have not done so yet, go to Inside Texas. Use that first link in our description, or you can use the QR code. Bam, that just popped up on your screen. 50% off the Ultimate Fan Bundle. Spring football may be done, but spring coverage is not. Got recruiting heating up this week. Got the NFL draft. We'll have some intel there. Basketball still adding players, and baseball coming down the home stretch. So should be a lot of fun. Come check it out over on Inside Texas. And RT, this is a fun little topic. You know, we know that the team finished spring early so they can go through finals because, as Muschamp and as Steve Sarkisian has joked, you know, Texas players still have to go to actual school, unlike some other spots. But we have a little bit of an understanding of what their next few weeks looks like until summer workout starts. But then we also want to talk a little bit about what we want to hear from Steve Sarkisian. And this is the time of year where he goes on his little media tour. And I'm just kind of curious, before we get to the team aspect, what are some things that, whether it's with someone like Josh Pate or someone like he'll show up on Cowherd, he'll show up on any of the big talking channels. He'll make some rounds. He goes to Houston for the Touchdown Club. He should be in a few different places over the course of the next couple months. But what are some things maybe you want to hear from Steve Sarkisian when he's talking about this team in very candid opportunities to refer to what he's going to have this upcoming season?
I think one thing that comes to mind, Joe, is I think about how after that 2021 season, I remember him going to the Houston Touchdown Club and talking about really what went wrong in that 2021 season, about how he felt like maybe, some issues with COVID and different things. He realized he didn't know his team as well as he thought that he did. And that's what really made him institute maybe a focus on culture and, really having that man-to-man ability to stand in battle with somebody else that you saw over the next few teams. And really that next generation of Longhorns that came after the 2021 class really embodied that. And then you saw at the beginning of last season, obviously, I think the season sort of caught Steve Sarkisian and a young Texas roster by surprise. Certainly did Arch Manning. And last week, Arch Manning talked about his low points in the season, about how he wasn't having very much fun. And he was very reflective about that to you and the other media members that were in attendance and his availability before the end of spring. So I'm interested, I guess, to hear Sark get a little bit reflective now that spring football's over, now that his class or that his roster is completely built out. There really probably won't be any more even last-minute transfer additions, barring something crazy unforeseen. So I'm interested to hear him get reflective about last year. What went wrong? What's changing? We know he instituted his culture day earlier in the offseason this year, put it into practice as soon as January when transfers like Cam Coleman immediately got to campus. So I think that'll be interesting. And obviously, I want to hear him talk about what young players are pushing for playing time. And that's something we can get into more in a minute.
Yeah, just thinking about the schedule, thinking out loud. We probably, unless he pops up on somebody's podcast, we're probably not going to hear from Sark until I think it's May 21st. He's at the Touchdown Club of Houston, and I can find my good old friend Neil Farmer can get me some info on that. We'll have plenty of info there. But that's kind of his first opportunity to not only talk to the media, but also talk to donors. And they're not like the name on rooms type of donors. They're obviously supporting football in the greater Houston area, but it's not like a exorbitantly expensive event, and it's for a great cause. But he understands that it's pretty regular fans, to be honest with you. And he's still really honest about what's going on with his team. And I think that's going to be really key, because by that point in time, he's going to have gone through exit meetings with every player, with his, with the assistant coaches there. And he's not going to have a transfer portal to have to worry about. And that, I think, is just big as far as how you manage a program. Like, you can be incredibly honest. You can tell players a lot of different things that maybe you wouldn't have told them but in the spring transfer portal era, just because you want to give them tough love, but you don't want them to leave because maybe you want that player on your team still. So I'm looking forward to that because I think this is the time of year where Steve Sarkisian is kind of formulating what he wants his message to be. Because for anything like that he's going to go to in the next few weeks and months, aside from, again, the national podcast, it's going to be local media covering it. It's going to be Texas media. It's not really going to be the big national outlets. When he gets to SEC media days, and even when he gets to SEC spring meetings, ESPNs are going to be there, Athletics, Sports Illustrated, like all those big, probably even Sports Business Journal in the modern day and age. Like all those types of outlets are going to be there for SEC spring meetings. Whereas in these smaller, I guess, more narrowly focused things, you're going to hear a lot about Texas football. And he builds up his message until that point. And I'm real curious. And you know what? This is going to be a huge question from Johnny Jackson, the Emperor. Did they fix the O-line? Like that, it's not just off-field stuff. Sark's very honest, I feel like, about on-field stuff. And I think we'll get a good answer after he reviews everything about how he feels he did putting the O-line together.
And I think to his question, I think something that the calendar of this offseason is going to really allow Sark to do that they didn't have the same luxury last year is they were still having to recruit last year. I mean, you saw them go into the end of spring football, and I can't remember. I know they added Murad Watson after spring. Did they also add Levon Johnson and Travis Shaw? I can't remember. At least two of them.
And then I think Emmett Mosley, but that's because Stanford fired Troy Taylor. That's why that window opened. But it was the same time frame.
I think now you're going to be able to really look at your position groups, do a lot more self-scouting and development. And you're not going to really have to be as focused on recruiting. You're going to be able to, you should already have a good picture of what you have, and then allow for internal development, internal conversations, and maybe even a heightened focus on game planning going into next year. I just wonder how much not having to deal with that spring portal window and continue to add pieces throughout May. I think that's going to help the coaching staff tremendously. And obviously, I think even though Will Muschamp is a new hire, I think adding Blake Gideon back into the fold, I think there's going to be a little bit more continuity amongst this staff than we think, even though there are some new faces.
Before we keep going, a quick word from our sponsor. If you've ever been caught in the rain without a jacket, at a game, at a tailgate, on the sideline, walking to the car, you already know the problem. Your rain jacket was at home because it was too bulky to bring. But that's why the Bearskin Heavy Storm Rain Jacket packs into its own pocket. Stash it in your truck. Throw it in your bag. Keep it in your glove. It's always with you. It weighs almost nothing. The second the sky opens up, you pull it out and you're covered. We're talking 20,000 millimeter waterproof. That's expedition grade. It's not a flimsy poncho. It's a real tape seam, sealed zipper rain jacket that handles sustained downpours, and it's completely PFAS free. There are no forever chemicals, which is more than most outdoor brands could say. And here's the part I really like. It zips directly into the Bearskin hoodie. So on a cold, rainy game day, you zip the rain jacket into the hoodie, and you got a full, warm, and waterproof system. When the rain stops, unzip the jacket, pack it into its pocket, and just keep moving. Right now, Bearskin's running 60% off the Heavy Storm Rain Jacket with free shipping. So text INSIDE to 36912, INSIDE to 36912, and they'll send you a link to grab one at 60% off. So keep it in your truck, keep it in your bag, but next time it rains, you're the guy who's ready. Text INSIDE to 36912. That's INSIDE 36912, and they'll send you a link to grab one at 60% off. Again, INSIDE to 36912. I got a lot of use out of mine this weekend, so glad to use it. Can definitely endorse the product. Real quick before we go on to what the team is doing and maybe what the coaches are doing too, when you hear Sark talk, and again, probably to these big nationally focused outlets instead of the narrow Texas focus, he's going to ask about like the left guard and stuff like that. What are some things that maybe you're going to keep an eye out for as we head to, a 9-game SEC, his 6th season in Austin, Arch Manning's 2nd year as starter. What are some big picture things that like a national college football fan would be interested in hearing from a Texas perspective?
Yeah, I think Sark is going to get a lot of questions from the Joel Klatz, Josh Pates of the world. I think three things come to mind: the bugaboo or the elephant in the room that are Ohio State and Georgia. Obviously, Ohio State is on the schedule. Georgia would be on it in the SEC championship or the college football playoff. I think, what are you going to do to finally break through that wall? And it's going to be interesting to see what he says. He's obviously not going to dump out his playbook on the table and reveal his X's and O's and strategy there. But I'm interested to see what he says about if he reveals anything of why Ryan Day and Kirby Smart have had Sark's team's number to such an extent. And maybe it's just the part of college football, which even when the days of the transfer portal really has not changed, that unless you're Kurt Signetti in Indiana, you have to pay your dues and you have to take some lumps before you're finally the king standing on top of the mountain. And then I think also, I think he's going to get asked a lot, what's different about Arch Manning this year? And I'm sure that's coming because people want to talk about Arch Manning and love talking about Arch Manning, but especially with Arch himself revealing last week that he hit a pretty low point at the middle of last year around Gainesville and then the overtime narrow win against Kentucky. And I think you're going to hear Sark talk about what he saw change with Arch, maybe what went wrong at the beginning of the season, how he and Arch have learned to get on a better page together, maybe like he and Quinn Ewers learned back in the day. Because I don't know if Sark or Arch really saw that coming last year. I think it caught both of them by surprise, those struggles that Arch had in Columbus and in some of those other games like UTEP. And then I think the other thing that you're going to hear talked a lot about is I think there's going to be some preseason summer politicking Joe about the college football playoff. I think Sark is going to get a 6-month head start on telling people, hey, if we're 9-3, if we're 10-2 this year, that's a whole lot different than 11-1 or even 12-0 in a lot of other conferences.
Yeah, that's just one of those things that has just, it was a 5-month ago thing. And it's just, so we've had so much happen since then, the portal, spring football in general, all these recruiting things, to where I know for a fact that no matter where Sark is talking, he's going to be asked about, do you think 9-3 is good enough and stuff like that? Because, he's going to argue, as he has plenty, that 9-3 in a 9-game SEC, you can make a really, really strong argument that it's different than 9-3 in any other league, including the Big Ten, which doesn't have that 10th Power 4 requirement. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he talks about, especially as like just the Arch factor, them growing together. Because you could tell with Quinn, there was a lot of them growing together that happened over 22 and 23 and made it into 2024 with that deep run. And I think also you'll see a lot of, look, you changed half the roster. Like, you had your normal recruiting class come in, but you also took in 20 transfers, including guys on the O-line. Like, what made you change? And was it Indiana? Was it something else? Like that, I'm curious to see how he responds to questions about that without using the old and oddly worded, like, why don't we have dinosaurs because they didn't adapt quote that he gives. You can't really adapt to like a 10 times thermonuclear warhead hitting the earth, but I get what he's trying to say. How is he going to respond to, like, well, we wanted to be a high school recruiting program, but we also took in 20 new guys on the roster, including the number 1 portal player? I'm curious to see. I don't think he has to defend himself, but just what he's able to talk about when going that direction. As far as the team goes, Sark said they're going to do, like we mentioned, lifting, finish some workouts, have exit meetings, go through final exams, usually summer the conditioning program, and therefore the workouts on the field with some coaches that they're able to have in the summer. That usually starts the week after Labor Day. So when summer 1 starts at UT. I have one in mind for things I want to hear during summer football. Anything big that you want to hear from the team as they go through workouts and hit a bunch of benchmarks during the summer?
I think it's what I've written about several times this offseason. I really want to hear about how that vaunted. I'm now with the transfer portals, Joe, getting things mixed up a lot. The number one recruiting class was the 2025 class, correct? The Justice
Correct.
Terry class. Okay, I want to hear about that Justice Terry class of kids. Pushing the envelope and really, because obviously Texas lost some players like the Christian Clarks of the world that were perceived starters or depth pieces just a few months ago. But that can all be bolstered, and the ceiling of this team can, I think, be blown up completely if you get a huge push in contributions from that 2025 class. We know the household names already, like Lance Jackson and Nick Townsend, Cade Phillips, Grayson Littleton, obviously those guys. But I want to start hearing about the Justice Terrys of the world and those guys really starting to make an impact and really be pushing for playing time, having a great summer off or workouts, I guess mini off season there before fall camp starts. But I think you want to start to hear those names constantly be brought up as guys like, hey, it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. Xavier Worthy is always the one who comes to mind, and he's not a redshirt freshman, but man, I love any Jermaine Bishop content that I can get, and it's starting to give me Xavier Worthy flashbacks from back in the day of like, hey, what are we going to do? And will we, Joe, finally see 20 personnel busted out? We've never seen it. I always go back to the play at the end of the Dylan Gabriel Red River shootout in which Texas lost. You had Jatavian Sanders and Jonathan Brooks on the field and 3 wide receivers. Even then, he didn't put 4 wide receivers out on the field. So are we going to finally get 20 personnel? Because he simply has no excuse not to do it. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, lots of receiver talent. I think the only time he's ever done it, the 4 wide receiver thing, was Tech in 2022 when they needed a miracle. Like, so it takes dire circumstances.
I was at a fall wedding during overtime. That game went so long, and finally the ceremony was starting. So I missed the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter in overtime and learned about the result from the groom's dad, who was sitting in the front row. I was standing up there, looked over at him. He's watching the game on his phone during his son's wedding. Shout out the boss if you're watching today. And he just mouths to me, "We lost." So I missed that brief showing of 20 personnel there. The Tariq Milton game, as they call
it. Yep, that's exactly what it was. I just want to hear, and one more 2025 guy, Jonah Williams, how his shoulder recovers. I just want to hear about the classic Arch and all his receivers just getting on the same page, that type of thing. That just has to happen with some new, some old in the receiver room, namely Cam Coleman, namely Ryan Wingo. They just need to get on the same page. And, it's going to be fun because this is going to be a lot of 7-on-7. It's not going to be any, pad work. They're not going to be tackling. They'll whatever 11-on-11 they do, it's toned down in the physicality. Like, I'm really excited to hear about what those players are doing in order to create a threatening downfield offense and horizontal, just threatening offense in general over the course of these next few months before the season starts. So should be a lot of fun to track. We'll be tracking all of it over at Inside Texas. So make sure you use that first link in our description. Go sign up, 50% off the Ultimate Fan Bundle. You can also use that QR code at the top left of the screen. That's the best of Inside Texas. That's the best of On3. That's the best of Rivals. That's all the recruiting coverage, all the remaining basketball transfer portal coverage, team workouts, baseball as SEC play winds down and the postseason approaches. Should be a lot of fun to track it all over to Inside Texas. So, RT, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Reheat on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.